Hello and welcome to the Unapologetic Moms Club. I'm your host Janine McKinnon, Women's Empowerment Coach from unapologeticmotherhood.com. I'm a mom of two, community leader, multiple small business owner, and your personal mama bear cheerleader. We're here to dig into the deep shit, to help you feel empowered and give you the tools to break free from patriarchal standards and create a life you not only survive, but thrive in. We'll chat self-care, women's health, sex, relationships, plant medicine, personal development, and so much more so you can rock it in your unique mom life and beyond. Without further ado, let's dig in. Hello! Today I am so excited to be welcoming Nicole Crone, voice and vision of My Aligned Purpose, to the podcast today to chat plant medicine, more specifically ayahuasca. So welcome to the podcast, Nicole.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to have this conversation. And as I was sharing with you, it's not a conversation that I've ever had on a podcast before, like definitely in my intimate circles and with close people, but not on a podcast. So I'm looking forward to sharing.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I feel like ayahuasca is something that's like starting to bubble up more. People are becoming more open, speaking about it. I know personally, it's definitely piqued my interest as someone who's had a long time relationship with cannabis and mushrooms for plant medicine. So I'm really excited to be sharing about your journey and learning from you and hearing more about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. And it definitely was a journey that I was not expecting. It was not like I had done lots of research or anything like that. And I'm sure we can get into it about what that all looked like, but it was like one day I didn't know about ayahuasca and then one day I did, and I was signed up and going. So it was all like a very quick turnaround.
Oh, wow. I love it. Just the dive head first, go into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's dive right into it. I love it if you could start off just sharing a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then perhaps your relationship with plant medicine and how that's evolved over the years.
Yeah. Okay, great. So hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here, Janine. My name is Nicole. I live in Victoria, BC. I'm originally from the East Coast. Need to live near water. I've discovered that about myself. Born and raised in Nova Scotia. And as you said, I'm the voice and vision of My Aligned Purpose. And I co-founded My Aligned Purpose in 2020. I think like a lot of people, it was, with the shutdown of the physical world, a lot of people resorted to going online. And I used to be a high school teacher and I knew that I wanted out of that. I knew I wanted out of teaching in 2016 and I left for a little bit and then made my way back into the classroom. And then when the 2018-2019 school year was over, like I got out just in time. I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I will figure something out. And so I looked to see if I could apply for unemployment in the fall of 2019. I was like, I need to just hold myself over. I'm not going back into a classroom. So many people thought I was crazy because they were like, you spent 6 years in university to do this. Like you had a permanent classroom, you had a good job, you had the benefits, you had it all. And I was like, and I was not happy. Let's remember that. That's the most important thing here. And so I was like, I will figure this out. Long story short, all the stars were aligning of becoming a coach. It was coming at me from every angle I could turn my head, people paying me to go on retreats to coach, and I had no formal background in it. People coming to my yoga class and saying like, have you ever thought about being a coach? I'd love if you'd work with me. Friends looking into coach training for me, being like, I think this coach training would be the best for you. It was like screaming loud of go become a coach. And so that's what I did 2019 into 2020, and then started My Aligned Purpose podcast. That was actually the beginning. And I had no intention of where I was driving listeners. It was not like I didn't have a business. I didn't have a website. There was nowhere to lead them. It was just like, hi, I want to talk. So I'm going to start a podcast. And I knew in my mind I wanted to release it on my birthday, which is March 25th. And so March 17th, I was at a yoga teacher training in Vancouver doing my advanced yoga teacher training. The world got shut down. We got sent home. And I was like, oh yeah, I was going to release a podcast on my birthday. I guess I'll do that. And it was just so interesting because I had such a high listener rate right away because everybody was at home, like they weren't at work. So it really took off and gave me the confidence. I don't believe that confidence breeds action. My action allowed my confidence to come of like, okay, well, I can keep doing this. I can keep showing up and talking and talking about things that I guess people wanted to hear, manifesting a mindset and spirituality. And that led into my aligned purpose. And so that's where I'm at now with like life and doing work that I love. But the plant medicine journey actually like precedes this. It comes before all of this journey. And I would say in my early 20s, I moved out to Canmore with a group of girlfriends. We graduated university and we were like, we cannot get jobs with bachelors of arts. So like, let's go waitress. We were like, we're going to move to the mountains. And can you hear my dog?
Heard it a little bit, but that's okay.
For the listeners, I have a dog and he's obviously upset about something. So my girlfriends and I were all like, let's move to the mountains. We had never been there. And we hopped on a plane from Nova Scotia and we were on our way to Banff. We were like, we're going to just figure this out. I'm clearly like, okay with taking risks. And we get on the plane. We'd never been to Alberta before. And I'd never been past Ontario. And so all the people on the plane were like, so you're just going to get a cab from Calgary to Banff and figure it out? And we were like, yeah. And they were like, I think you should go to Canmore. I think you would like Canmore more. So we were like, okay, we'll stop in Canmore and see. So we said, we'll spend one night in Canmore, we'll hand out resumes and we'll see what happens. And we ended up staying for a year. And during that time, my mind was open to so many other things that I had never been exposed to before. I grew up in a really small town in Nova Scotia. I went to a really small school. And yeah, like, I was a teenager and smoked weed and drank and all of that, but none of that was like from a spiritual lens or from a conscious perspective. And so I moved to Canmore and I'm meeting these people who they were very nomadic, very transient, and they'd been all over the world and they were here to snowboard and ski and stuff. And yeah, they were talking about consciousness, about yoga, about spirituality, about plant medicine. And I felt like every moment of my life, I was that mind blown emoji. I was like, what is happening? Like they're speaking a language. And by them, I just mean random people that I would meet speaking a language that I'd never heard of. And so did start to experiment with psilocybin, but again, it wasn't from a conscious place. It was like me and a group of girlfriends being like, let's take mushrooms and see what can happen. And, we had a lot of fun and laughed a lot. And I actually have never had a bad experience. I've heard of people having bad experiences and I've never had that. It was always really great for me. And what it always allowed me whenever I would experiment with psilocybin, I would always be so much more in tune with my surroundings. Like, oh, wow, look at that flower, like the way it's existing. Look at the color pattern on that butterfly. Like I was so much more aware and in tune. And then obviously, your body comes down from the psilocybin high and you come back to, I guess, maybe a neutral state. And I'd be like, okay, so I know that there's the ability to see clearer, to hear better, to feel more. Like I know that that exists. And do I have to have plant medicine for that? And the answer became no. It's no, I don't. But it was such a great guide and teacher to show me like, oh, look for the patterns, look for the sounds, look for the sights, look for the signs. And so I got really into like, there is this very thin, the veil. There's a very thin veil, or at least it's thin in my world and became more and more thin where I was like, what a lot of people are perceiving as reality is just made up. It's just a paradigm that they're living in. And I'm going to choose to start to do things my own way. And yeah, I do contribute that year in Canmore, that experimentation with psilocybin to the beginning of my curiosity journey. And then I parked it. Then I was like, okay, everybody's getting serious and getting like big girl jobs. So I guess I should, my Bachelor of Arts wasn't going to get me anywhere. So maybe I'll go back to school and be a teacher. So I went back and got my BEd and started to teach junior high and high school. And it was like I believed that becoming a teacher, this is hindsight perspective, obviously, I believed that becoming a teacher was like one hat and one language, and like my true spiritual conscious self was another hat and another language, and I couldn't wear the two hats at the same time, and I couldn't speak the two languages at the same time. And so I parked that version of me. It was like, no, I'm going to become a teacher, and I'm going to spend all my time doing extracurriculars, and maybe I'll climb the ladder and become a principal. I don't know. Like, it was like I just went down this other route. And I'm sure people listening can relate to like, you know that there's one way to live, and then you get sucked back into like the societal, like, do it this way. Or I hope other people can relate. And yeah, so I, spent a few years getting into the classroom, parked that side of myself. I mean, yeah, I was always still like into yoga and meditation and spirituality, but not to the depth of what happened in 2016. So in 2016, the summer of 2015, I was engaged to somebody and we were together for 6 years, and he cheated. I guess he'd been cheating for quite some time. And so I called off. I was like, I don't want to be with you. And I clearly don't want to marry you. And at the time I had turned 30 in 2016. So I felt like my whole life was not making sense. I'm like, why is everybody else buying the homes and the cars and getting the jobs and settling down and having babies and doing the thing? And I'm like left here on my own. Like, this doesn't feel good. And then it was like, I finally admitted, like, I don't even like fucking teaching. Why am I pretending that I like this? I don't like being told to be at the school at 7 a.m. I don't like the fluorescent lights. I don't like the shitty coffee in the staff room. I don't like the gossip. I don't like the politics. What I do like is teenagers and being a teacher. I like those two things. Surely there's got to be another way, but I don't like all the rest of this stuff. And I'm going to tell you all I don't like the rest of this stuff. And people didn't like that. And so in the midst of like, I said, okay, I'm going to do one more year at this after the summer of 15. And I got that hard news. I was like, I'm going to do one more year of teaching, the 2015, 2016 year. And then what I wasn't openly talking about with like basically anybody was I was really hurt from that cheating. And I was trying to like play it really strong and really confident. But subconsciously, I was like, I'm never going to meet somebody and I'm never going to trust them. And therefore, I'm never going to settle down with somebody and I'm never going to have a family and I'm never going to have all these things that I once thought I was going to have, because there's no way I'm ever going to trust somebody again. And I think I said that to very few people, but one of the people that I said it to was one of my best friends. And she, from our Canmore days when we were 22, she had met a guy from Australia, an Aussie man, and they got married and she's moved there and she's been there for like 15 years and they have a kid and her life is there. And she said to me, my sister said to me, why don't you take a year off teaching and go to Australia? And it was like, that permission was exactly what I needed for somebody who loved me and cared for me to say, put your work down for a year and go live your life and see what happens. And so I called my friend and I said, if I was to move to Australia, do you think I could stay with you to get my feet on the ground? And she's like, yes, oh my gosh, this would be amazing. This would be so fun. Please, I would love to have visitors, blah, blah, blah. So I decided in April of 2016, I would finish up the school year. I'd work until the end of June. I gave my notice. I would go home to Nova Scotia for a couple months. I applied. I got a year working holiday visa at 30 years old, and I was going to go to Australia. And my girlfriend who was there said to me, I was arriving in October, and she said, I really think, this was in the summertime, I really think that you should come with me to this ayahuasca ceremony. And I was like, what? I don't even know what you're talking about. What are you saying? And she's like, ayahuasca, it's a plant medicine ceremony. And she's trying to describe it to me because she had done it once before in ayahuasca with these same shamans that we ended up going to. And the way she described it, I was like, that sounds like, like you're hallucinating. And that sounds really like, we did mushrooms like 10 years ago. That's not what I'm into right now. And she was like, Nicole, it's equivalent. People say ayahuasca is equivalent to 10 years of therapy in one sitting. I think it could be really helpful for you with like how you're feeling about trust. And I was like, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. We get off the phone and I YouTube ayahuasca. Well, it was terrifying. What I saw was terrifying. I was like, there is no fucking way I'm doing this. She is crazy. And so I tried to make up every excuse. Like, I can't afford it. It's happening 3 weeks soon as I get there. Like, I'm gonna want to just get settled in. You have to do the dieta, like prepare your body, your mind, your soul for it. I was like, I just don't think it's a good time. And so anyway, she didn't drop it. She was like, I'm signing up and I'm going, and I'm going to sign up for 2 people. And I really want you to come. I want you to come with me. So I arrive in Australia, like, I don't know, October 22nd or something. Have fun, tear it up for the first week that we're there. I'm like, what? I'm single. I'm 30. I quit my teaching job. I'm in Australia. And then it was like, okay, now we have to prepare for this thing. Like, I was like, okay, I'll go. And so we did the dieta, and for anybody who's listening and you don't know what I mean by that, it's basically like it's a cleanse for your body and your mind before you go into the ceremony. And it was really intense. It was, no alcohol, no substances whatsoever, no meat, no oils, no nuts. Like, it was like you're eating like lettuce, basically, to prepare so that your body can be fully open and ready to receive this medicine on a cellular level. And so we went, and our 2 shamans were from Peru. They were 2 women, and they come over to Australia twice a year to facilitate this ceremony in Mullumbimby, which is like in the jungle of Australia. And so that was quite a bit of a drive from where we were living. And on the drive, I had a panic attack. I was like, you have to pull over the car. I don't know if I can do this. I'm so afraid of what's going to happen. And she was like, but what's the worst that can happen? And I said, well, I'm afraid I won't ever be normal again. Like, what if I trip out and then I'm not normal again? She's like, but what's normal? Like, you're so afraid to trust. You have so much fear around like relationships and like men and your future. Like, is what could happen scarier than that? And I was like, that is so true. That's
You're
so
such
true.
a good friend.
Yeah, such a good friend. I was like, okay, so we came down and we got there. And so our ceremony was 2 nights, 3 days, and it was super intimate. I think with the 2 facilitators, there was 12 of us and the 2 of them, so 14 of us, in this beautiful home in the middle of the jungle. There was like this running river in the back, and like kookaburras in the tree. And it was so sacred and beautiful, the land. And again, I had no idea what I was getting into. It was like, bring white clothes, a sleeping bag, a flashlight with red light. You don't want bright light. You're going to do a 24-hour fast before you come. Bring a journal, bring something. It's so funny. Like, I still have this right here, but my friend said, bring a crystal. And when you hold on to that crystal, and if you feel like you're really spinning out, you can remember, like, you're here, you're human, like, hold on to this. And so I had this my whole first night, which was really helpful. And yeah, so the way it was explained to us is that we were going to do this like really big opening. The 2 women did. It was probably like 2 hours of ceremonial setting, of smudging, prayer, getting the space ready. And we were all in a circle in the like living room space. There was no couches or furniture, all in our sleeping bags. And they had a bucket there for everybody. And when we walked in and I like saw the setup, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. That's what's going to happen here. I'm going to die. And I didn't tell anybody I was going. And you're not really supposed to like advertise it. Like, it's sacred. So we got there, and what I would love for people who are listening and thinking about if this is for them, I do believe that ayahuasca will call you, and that's a saying, like when you're ready, she will call you. Mother ayahuasca will say, like, you're ready for this. You'll hear this podcast. You'll get curious. Like, it's not just like everybody signs up. It's not for just everybody to sign up. And so we got ready, the ceremony was set. And what I think was the most important piece is the intention setting. And so they said to us, like, you're going to set an intention for how you want this medicine to work with your body and through your body. And you can either say it internally to yourself or you can say it out loud. And then in about 30 minutes after that, you will start to feel the medicine move through your body. So, and ayahuasca only works like on a dark canvas, apparently. Like that's what we were told. And that's why it was always facilitated at nighttime. We would do like a sundown ceremonial setting. And then once it was dark, and this was technically like the spring in Australia. So it was like, the sun wasn't staying high too long. Once it was dark outside, we had that dark canvas, then they poured the drink. And so ayahuasca is, it's a drink. It's like a brew, and made from the, like, I never know how to say the leaves, but there's what it's doing is we have DMT, a molecule that our brain and body produces anyway. But ayahuasca activates that. It allows that molecule, the DMT molecule, to start to carve out new neural pathways and bring up past memories and heal them, allow you to see things through another lens. And what I learned the hard way, and the most magical way, is your intention is everything, and your intention tells the medicine where to go. And so I had two very different experiences. My first night and my second night were like night and day, black and white, like so different. And my first night, my intention was, it was so light. It was like, Mother Ayahuasca, and I said it out loud because everybody else was saying their intentions out loud. And it was something along the lines of like, show me like how I can feel really good, how I can feel better. It was so loose, so vague. And now you have to remember, I just moved to Australia 3 weeks prior to this. Before that, I was living in Northern Alberta. Before that, I was living in Calgary. Before that, I was living in Canmore. And before that, I was living in Halifax. I'd never lived on the West Coast. I'd never thought about living here. And the very first night, I started to get all of these memories about my sister and I when we were kids and how we shared a bed. And I forgot as an adult that I shared a bed with my sister until I was 7. And then we moved to a new house and we got separate rooms. We had separate beds, but we had a big queen size waterbed with like a Little Mermaid cover. And in my first night of the ayahuasca journey, I started to remember how my mom would come in and we'd be giggling and laughing. And she'd say, girls, Nicole has school in the morning. Like, you have to go to bed. And it was like it was like it was happening right then and there. And I think this is what happens with ayahuasca and perhaps other plant medicines as well, is that timelines are removed. And so, like, yes, I'm Nicole in this physical body in this moment, but I can also be 6-year-old Nicole in the bed with my sister. And I can also be Nicole in a past life. And I can also be Nicole in my future. And it's like the timelines remove themselves. And so it's vast. And it's so hard to explain. It's like something to be experienced. But what that did was then I started to be like, oh, I miss my sister. I haven't been around my sister in like 10 years. She's moved away to Seattle and I've been away teaching and waitressing and moving all around. And I was like, being around my sister is really important to me. And then I started to get all these visions of like, and I have the journal. I could take a picture, could go with this podcast, but I have the journal entries from ayahuasca. And it was like, maybe I could move to Victoria, BC. Maybe I could get a job at Lululemon. It was like all these crazy ideas were coming to my mind that I'd never thought of before. And 1 year later, the way I got to move to Victoria was my sister got me a job at Lululemon. And I was able to move here and be near her, and I'm still here. And so like it was like I saw that before it happened. And then I saw my past life with my sister, and they all sort of like intertwined and interconnected. But one of the really cool things that like happened to me during my ayahuasca ceremony that sounds unbelievable, like actually hard to believe, is I went into that first night and I didn't know like anything about the chakra system. Maybe I took yoga teacher training. And so like I knew that there was 7 in the colors. That was maybe about it. But it's like you're given information. You're given information that you're meant to use. And all of a sudden, one of my teachers, Sarah, or one of the shamans, Sarah, it was like I looked over at her and her whole entire body was translucent and I could see her whole entire chakra system lit up. It was like I could see through her body, chakra system lit up. And then it was like an encyclopedia of information about the chakra system was downloaded to me.
Wow.
I know. And it's so crazy. And now I embed that into all of our work, like our year-long platinum program. every single module has a chakra system, like how to use this into your business. I live and breathe that information into my own life. Like if I'm feeling like, oh, like I have like a little bit of a cold sore or like a sore throat or something, my first thought is like energetically, what's my throat chakra? What's going on with my throat chakra? Like I know that I have that information. And so I felt like that was one of the coolest things for me out of that first night, was being gifted that information. And I know some people listening are going to be like, that doesn't make sense. I don't understand. That doesn't sound real. And it's my truth. And it was like amazing. Yeah, my first night was just really beautiful. Lots of like heart expansion memories and like happy tears. And it was so, so, so nice. And I'm grateful that it went in that order, because if my second night had been my first night, I wouldn't have done the second night. So after the first night, you know, we drank the ayahuasca at like 8 p.m. And then sort of like, and when I say like come back to, like the medicine has done its thing over about 8 hours. So at 4 a.m, they gathered us all. They fed us like this beautiful vegan soup and some like homemade sourdough bread, and then encouraged that we rest for a few hours at like 5 a.m. And then the next day we had like a really potent, intimate integration circle. And not that other people's stories are not mine to share, but I had like this really beautiful evening, and there were people reliving sexual traumas, different abuses, different like, getting to the actual root millisecond experience of where their trauma came from and reliving that, and being so grateful that they relived that, because they have an answer to why their body's been holding on to it and able to let it go. Mm-hmm. Like that's the medicine. The medicine is like, it's not yours to hold anymore. The heavy energy is not for you to keep. And so, yes, it might be hurtful or harmful to relive something that somebody else did to you or said to you, or that you did to somebody else or said to somebody else. And the gift is there to teach you how to move forward. And I think that's what's so powerful about it. So then we go to my next night. And my next night, we're remembering, my friend brought me here because she's like, you don't trust men and you feel like you're never going to live the life you want to live. So I was like, okay, I'll have to up the ante here with my intention. So my intention was, I want to be able to trust men again in an intimate relationship. Because like, if you're my buddy, yeah, sure. I like men if you're my buddy. But in an intimate relationship, I want to believe that a relationship is available for me. And I want to know that if I want to have a family someday, that type of love is there for me. And it was vulnerable to even like admit that I wasn't feeling that was available for me. And I went to my version of hell and back. It was like nothing I have ever experienced. And so I didn't throw up the first night. There was no pain. There was no fear. It was nothing like that. Soon as I start to feel the medicine move through me on the Saturday night, all of a sudden, the way I can describe it is like I had to get over on my hands and knees. That bucket was my lifeline. And it's like, if you go to a fair or something where they have those big merry-go-rounds with the mechanical horses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Carousel.
A carousel. Yes. It was like, I saw this gigantic carousel, and then all of a sudden I was inside the center mechanics. So it was like there was machinery and mechanics all around me and rapid fire snakes coming at me. Like, yeah, it was so scary. And I thought, this is it. I'm fucked. I'm not coming out of this alive. I'm never going to feel normal again. I just did something. And like in that moment, having those thoughts, being like, what did I do? This is not okay. And it was like the snakes were coming at me and slithering by me and like all this sharp metal objects. And I was screaming and crying and puking. And the two women came over and they were smudging me and saying prayers over me. And I felt like I was evaporating. I was like, this is it. There's not going to be anything left to me. I cannot stop throwing up. And then they left for a little bit and I was still throwing up. I was still in the mechanics. And then I was starting to fear like, I'm going to drown in this bucket because you can't actually talk. Like you can't ask, I couldn't ask for help. And then right when my bucket got full, they came and replaced my bucket and put a new one in front of me. And I was like, okay, taken care of. Like, I just have to like what I said to myself is like, I just have to trust that this is happening for a reason. It was like, it went like the carousel came to a halt for a second, a millisecond, and then went back again, but it was a little bit slower. And I was like, what did I just think? What did I just say? What did I just do? And I was like, trust. I have to trust. I have to trust. And the more that I kept saying, like, I have to trust, I have to trust, it was slowing down, it was slowing down. The snakes were going away. Everything was starting to like move away. And then I got to this like, aha, like earth shattering moment where it was, I wasn't, because I'd been cheated on by 3 boyfriends at this point, one being a fiance, 2 boyfriends. And so I was having all this like body image stuff and like, what's wrong with me and blah, blah, blah. And then it was like the epiphany came through that it's actually not about me. The reason they cheated is actually about them or whatever they're up to. But like I need to trust that I'm worthy of finding a man who is at the like same standard and caliber and energy and intention as me. Like I need to trust that there's good men out there, just like I'm a good human being. And it might not sound as profound as it felt, but that was the message my body needed to absorb. And I walked away from ayahuasca after that weekend. I mean, so much more happened that second night, but that piece right there, I mean, I'm now happily married and I used to be so untrustworthy. Like, I want to know who everybody was like, all my exes, like, who are you talking to? Who are you texting? What's on your phone? Blah, blah. Like, I was in a state of paranoia and like not comfortable. And like, that's just not a great way to be in a relationship. And I could never imagine feeling that way now, ever. And I don't know. I'm not saying that if I didn't go to ayahuasca, I would never have been able to fix my trust issues. But I'm so grateful I did. I'm so grateful that I went there and I got that lesson. And the second night actually showed, I saw myself being birthed by my mom. And it was really crazy because I never asked my mom my birth story before. But I knew that I was premature. I knew it came quick. I know like that, but I didn't know. I was like, when I saw my mom birthing me, that happens in ayahuasca, you see yourself being born. I saw my mom holding a woman's hand and I was like, what? So when I left ayahuasca, I called my mom and I was like, I just did this thing. It's really hard to explain, but like, who was with you when you gave birth to me? And she's like, your Aunt Heather. She's like, we were out getting groceries. And all of a sudden I was starting to like, I came early. She's like, and I was starting to like have cramps and contractions. And we went to the hospital. She's like, I didn't have time for medicine or anything. Like you just came so fast. And it was your Aunt Heather there with me. And I'm like, I saw that. I saw that it was a woman like there with my mom, like consoling her. And so that was just like really cool to experience. And then I saw my own journey of like having my own children, which was just like what I needed to know that was available for me. I saw my person. It wasn't like I saw Jeff's face, but I saw somebody with like really beautiful dark skin and that they were hugging me and that we had these babies. And it was really interesting because I would see like a baby in a crib and I would go to pick the baby up, but then all of a sudden I was the baby and it was like my mom was picking me up. And so it was a lot of back and forth of like understanding how I was loved. I was very loved as a baby and as a child, seeing that reciprocated to me. And then like knowing that that's going to be available for me to give to a baby was so incredibly freeing. And then the last piece that really showed me that timelines don't exist is I have one sister and my sister and I were in this vision that I had, and we were both babies, and there were lots of other people, and like this woman that I see in my dreams every night was there. But basically my sister and I said like, okay, we'll see you when you're born. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go into this life now. And I knew that we had been together in another life. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go into this life. And she was like, okay, I'll be there shortly. And my sister's 3 years younger. And so all of that was just like, this is too magical to not wish that everybody had the opportunity to do it. And so even though it was terrifying and it was scary and it was fearful and it was all of the things, I left there saying, I wish everybody I love could experience this in their lifetime, because everybody deserves that healing. Everybody deserves to remove this like illusion of the ego. Everybody deserves to know that they're loved and that they're worthy and that they don't have to hold on to their traumas. So yeah, it was incredibly life-changing for me. I left that. I feel like I went into that ayahuasca ceremony. I was 30 years old. I was in Australia. I was living that life. And I came out of it a completely different human being. And I think the people that know me pre and post ayahuasca ceremony would say that. They'd be like, oh yeah, like you're trusting, you're go with the flow, you're in tune, you know your intuition. And I didn't think I had that before. So that's my like kind of little bit of a story about my journey with ayahuasca. I mean, there's so much, but those I think are the key points of like, it really supported me to see things that I was shoving down and just being like, I don't want to look at this. I don't want to look at this. I was too afraid to look at the things that were making me feel afraid.
Wow. That was just all so incredible hearing about all of it. But you're so right. Like you touched on it just now, and then kind of at the beginning of how we can kind of have those two selves. So, like, in a way, we're shoving that stuff down, right? And we have these different traumas and experiences. And it's like, okay, we got to focus on this now. So we shove these things down. And through plant medicine, and there are, of course, some other different modalities and ways, but it sounds like it cracks you open. And tying into that intention, it's serving up exactly what you need. You're cracked open, you're dealing with it, you're feeling it, you're going through it, experiencing it, and then being able to release it.
Yeah.
And integrate it.
And I think too, the other piece that's really important is like, there's a lot of like commercialization of plant medicine now. You can sign up and go and there's like 100 people and all of that. Like the fact that mine was led by 2 women, that was felt. Their energy was so nurturing. It was so mothering. It was so feminine. It was so like comforting. I do feel drawn to sit with ayahuasca again, and only in the like facilitation of women.
That makes a lot of sense. Like you touched on, like the intention really makes a huge impact.
Yeah.
And from like my different experiences and learning with psilocybin, it's all about the intention and the setting.
Yeah.
Because you need to be able to feel safe and secure, be around the right kind of people. And that really makes a huge impact for where your mind's going to go. Because if you don't feel safe, if you're worried about different things, that's where your mind's going to go instead of necessarily opening up. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm curious because you touched on like your first night, you had this like really light experience, but there was others who were really reliving their traumas and different things like that. Did you notice that when you were in your thing, or were you very much kind of in your own bubble, or what was that like? Because I can imagine that being like a little bit concerning potentially. You're doing your thing and then like hearing these other things going on.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of hard in hindsight to like remember exactly how I felt. I definitely heard people like screaming and crying and like clawing at the floor and people having orgasms and like all the things. And it's like, if I'm recalling it right or correctly, it's like I could hear that. And I was so in my own thing of like, oh, like, I want to console this person and like, oh yeah, I'm being born right now. Like it's like, yeah. So I think that you can hear those things and notice that they're happening, and keep I think the power actually is too, like the facilitators played like beautiful like medicinal music all night, like they had their chimes and their drums and they were singing, and so like you might hear that, but then they walk around and like the chimes are like right in your ear, so then that kind of goes off into the distance, then you're like, oh yeah, I am a baby right now. And so I think that really helped. I know I went to in-person breathwork ceremonies where you can have the same sort of experiences and transformations. And I found it to be quite challenging when other people are really going through it and I'm laying beside them in a breathwork ceremony. So I think I guess it depends how in your own journey you are to not be in somebody else's journey.
That makes a lot of sense, kind of where you're taking it, your focus, your intention, as well as the setting, and being
Yeah.
able to have that like healing sound and the facilitators going through and doing that helped kind of draw you back into where you needed to go.
Yeah, exactly. And with ours, they didn't recommend that couples go together. They and their reason behind that was if unless you're so both open, heart-centered, trusting, and your experience is not going to impact your partner's experience. Because I could imagine if I was laying beside Jeff and he's screaming and crying and having a hard time, I would want to console him, but that's actually not my job. He's meant to go through that. And so they do recommend like not to go with partners. Like if you're going to do this, go on your own and have your own experience. And my friend and I did go together um and we each had our own individual experiences. Like she knew I was in it, but she didn't try and like fix me or help me or whatever. She just like stayed where she was at. And that was, I think in the moment I probably wanted her to like hug me or remind me I was going to be okay. But now after the fact, I'm glad I just went through my own journey.
That makes a lot of sense. Again, with that like intention and the setting. And I can definitely imagine how going with someone you're really close to, whether it's your partnered relationship or some other kind of relationship dynamic, that can really pull you out of it. I know with a lot of different healings, it really truly is about healing yourself first, doing the work yourself. And then, of course, like partnerships are this amazing healing journey where you bring up each other's triggers and things like that. But you really do need to do the work yourself to be able to do the work together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could not agree more. Yeah, it's all really interesting. I find myself, if I have people that are close in my life, and I've recommended ayahuasca to somebody that I love a lot, and they've said multiple times, like, I'm too afraid, and I really try and bring it back to like, but what is more fearful, like living the way you're actually consciously living right now? Or going and exploring, like, yeah, you might have the darkest night of your soul and all of your demons might come to the surface and then it will pass. Like rather than every day waking up and it's like the demons are trying to come up and you're like, no, 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 not today. But then they're still there. It's like, just let them come up and then let them go. I left ayahuasca feeling like I was like floating. They recommended like, don't go and blast it on social media that you were just here doing ayahuasca this weekend and still refrain as long as you can from like meat and alcohol and other substances that maybe are going to bring your energy frequency down, and wear sunglasses. Things are going to feel really bright. And I just left there feeling like I am the lightest human being. And I don't mean like numbers on a scale, like my energy vibrancy was the lightest I've ever felt in my life after having that like terrible, terrible 8 hours of throwing up, crying, screaming, fear. I wouldn't have changed it for the world. I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, very cool. And that's something where you really do walk the walk. Like you were scared shitless, like having a panic attack on the way there.
Yeah.
But also that trust piece that came up for you in the second night, but also
Mm,
just really being aware like this isn't going to last forever. The medicine will run its course, it will wear off. And
mhm.
so just to trust that like you're going to go through it, it's not going to last forever, and
Yeah.
just opening up to it.
Yeah, exactly. There is on Gaia. I don't know if anybody has that. It's a streaming platform and it's like a spiritual Netflix. It's quite amazing. But there is a whole series on Gaia, and I can't remember what it's called right now. Um, but of all the plant medicines,
Mm.
and it's educational and it teaches you like about every type of plant medicine that there is. And so there's a whole episode, maybe even two, on ayahuasca if anybody's like looking for, maybe a bit more like education or like studied background into like this medicine, where it comes from, who cultivates it, like how is it performed, what is the medicinal purpose of it. Because what I was told when we did it is that at the time in 2016, that ayahuasca is illegal everywhere in the world except for Peru, where it is sourced, and like one of the Scandinavian countries, and that they start with their children. It's like with little bits of with their children to, if they're going through their own traumas, let's not have you carry that your whole life. We can do this ceremonial now in a like helpful, supportive way. And so I think that that's really beautiful too.
That's the exact words that was coming to mind as she said that. That's really beautiful, to be able to want to support their children through that. Because again, like we touched on, so much of our life, it's like, suck it up, stuff it down. And to be able to be supported through that, to really experience it and release it. I can only imagine how amazing like those young adults are able to be without all of that baggage that they're holding on to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So good. So yeah, I just encourage that if anybody's curious about whether it's ayahuasca or psilocybin or cannabis or Cambo or like all of the things that exist out there, to like ask yourself like why, and to think about the intention that you would set, and can you start doing some work before the plant medicine? Like, can you start to, take a moment and connect with your breath? Can you look into, so that you're not relying on it, right? We want it, like I said, we want to be able to use these things to maybe show us something, but then be able to go and continue to live our lives and not feel like, oh, I'll never be cured unless I sit down with plant medicine. It's like the plant medicine can be your guide or your tool, but you also have all of that available within you as well. And then it's really cool and insightful to see what it's like if you go deeper.
Absolutely. Like you touched on, these plant medicines really unlock things that are already within us.
Yeah.
Like with your psilocybin experience, noticing all of these textures and patterns and all these intricate details of the life around you. And then you were able to carry that forward because now you kind of knew what to look for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, since like having gone through this experience, is there any like big tips or things that would have been helpful for you to know before going into it, or anything like that you would like to share?
Well, I think like I don't know that I really understood the importance of the dieta. Like I was just like, oh, okay, so we're not supposed to like drink alcohol and eat meat. Like, but now I understand that because ayahuasca is a medicine and it's working on a cellular level, and it's moving through every cell of your body. If you can do the foundational work to make it move through your body easier so that there's not blockages or resistance with the diet, with the like cleansing and the clearing out, I think that that is super, super helpful. I know some people go into ayahuasca and different plant medicines and they don't do the diet. They're like, I didn't have time or whatever, but like I'm here and we'll see what happens. I would say like take that seriously and yeah, take it seriously and implement it. And another thing would be, yeah, to have your intentions before you go in, and to allow yourself to go deep. Like, my first night, it was a surface level intention and I got not a surface level experience, but I got an experience that reflected that. And then when I was like, okay, what I'm really here to do the work on, is this intention. And I got the experience to really do the work. So I think like, if you're going to sign up and put your energy and attention, time, money into this, then yeah, do the work. And lastly, I would say like really vet who you're having this experience with. Like I would never, ever, ever encourage drinking ayahuasca on your own or with a group of friends. I would say like find the right shamans, the right plant medicine healer guides. And by the right one, I feel like everybody knows who's right for them. Like I said, for me, it's definitely always going to be women. And perhaps like a word of mouth experience, like somebody that's done the experience with this person, and they can speak to the safetiness of it and the quality. I think that those are some important things to think about.
Yeah, it sounds like with all those, the common thread is just really slowing down, being intentional, choosing what you want to get out of it, making the most of your experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Intention in itself goes such a long way. That's something that comes up all the time in my work because that really chooses the direction of where you go. And so when you can take the time to really prioritize that, it makes all the difference.
Yeah. And I think it's, what I often share with myself and people we're working with is intention is always greater than expectation. Go in with an intention for something, but don't have an expectation, because if your expectation's not met, then, then you'll feel a certain way. But the best we can do is set an intention and go from there.
I love that, intention over expectation. And that plays into all the manifestation, just releasing attachment to the journey and the outcome, but intending where that endpoint will eventually land.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Well, thank you so much for just your openness, your vulnerability with sharing such deeply personal things about your whole experience. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure listeners will find it really helpful to really hear that. And I feel like I have so much better of an understanding of exactly what that process is like, aside from the fact of the ayahuasca journey is 10 years of therapy. I've heard that before, but to really understand more of what you go through, I think is really helpful. And for those that are feeling drawn to Lady Ayahuasca and being called, I'm sure they find it very helpful as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for the space to be able to share about it. As I had mentioned, I've never shared about it on a podcast before, or in a public setting like this, just, in more intimate conversations. And I want to keep it sacred and keep it respected. And, and my intention of sharing this story is that if somebody is feeling the call to a deeper healing, that it's available and it could change your whole life.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. I definitely think that came across. And where can people find more about you? They love your vibe through this. They want to connect. Where can they find you?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Well, everything is My Aligned Purpose for my business. So Instagram is at My Aligned Purpose. Our website is myalignedpurpose.com. Our podcast is called My Aligned Purpose Podcast. And then me personally on Instagram is the Nicole Crone. So happy to connect anywhere and everywhere. And on our podcast, I drop 2 episodes a week. One is solo, and I do all mindset and manifestation. And the second episode is Biz Besties, and it's Kayla and I talking about all the things behind the scenes to run an online business and the trials and tribulations of that.
I love it. And for those that are feeling drawn to you, I definitely recommend checking out all the things. I've been in Nicole and Kayla's world for, I think, just about 3 years now at this point.
Yeah.
And I just love your guys' passion, your messaging. It really comes through on such a deep level. And you're so great at mixing the strategy and the woo. Yes, there's these concrete things that we want in the material world and with our business and the strategy, but there's so much energetics behind it as well. And I think you guys just do such a beautiful job of really mixing those things.
Thank you. It was the ayahuasca giving me the chakras. It was saying, go teach this in everything you do. I was like, okay.
Totally. It's so cool how everything from those initial visions really did unfold.
Yeah. So cool. So okay. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate being here. And I look forward to connecting with anybody that reaches out.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you for those that are listening. We're here if you have any questions. And until next time, take care. Thanks for joining us inside the Unapologetic Moms Club. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you feel called, I would so appreciate it if you shared about this episode in your stories or left us a review to help us reach more women on their unapologetic mama journey. As a thank you for your support, you'll be entered into our monthly draw for a free laser coaching session. Just tag at Janine.McKinnon in your story shares or leave the rating or review, screenshot it, and email to Janine@unapologeticmotherhood.com to be entered. One lucky winner is selected every month for a focused coaching session to support you in working towards your current desires. Until next time, you got this.